Hello and welcome to another Sky Sports Fantasy Football video. We are back once again with another Sky Fantasy Football Q&A. We've done this for a couple of weeks, but we're back to it now, and we have a couple of questions from the people over on Twitter. Once again, if you do want to get involved in these videos and you have a question or a dilemma of your own, I do ask on Wednesday nights over on Twitter to submit any questions or dilemmas, and then we'll answer it on Thursday's video. So jumping straight into things, we have mstay1986 who says, when's the next planned transfer? I can see me not making one for a month barring injuries. So obviously we spoke about on the Gameweek preview about how I've kind of missed out on Simicast. I'm still unsure on whether I definitely want to make that transfer or not. I think it's going to depend on press conferences, and we'll see if Bayer is definitely going to be out for a long time, but I think even with his injury it could end up just being a better move just to move on to Simicast. So still debating it, but that is a possible move for me. Other than that, I do want to get Rodri in game week 14, which is literally next week. I think it's the 11th of November, maybe the 14th of November, I can't really remember, but it's around that time anyway after Spurs play. I want to get Rodri in, but in a video that comes out tomorrow, we will be talking over the fixtures that have come out up to the Overhaul. Obviously we can fully plan now up to the Overhaul with the new fixtures, and I do have a Spurs captain, mainly being Son, but a Spurs captain being the best captaincy for I think 4 or 5 game days between now and the Overhaul. So whether I want to make the Maddison to Rodri transfer and leave out a Spurs captain, I don't really know about yet. Again, it's another one that I'm going to have to plan, but you can obviously make your own opinion on that when you watch tomorrow's video. But yeah, really, other than that, the Simicast transfer possibly at the weekend, and then I do want to get Rodri in. But I think it could end up being a quiet month. Obviously, we always say this, and then there's always something that crops up in terms of a player coming into a lot more form, and then we really want to get them in. But it should be alright for the next, at least for November. Obviously there's a very hectic schedule coming in December, where we'll probably make a lot of transfers, so I think trying to hold off for the next couple of weeks could definitely be beneficial, and I think there's definitely a good opportunity to do that with so little fixture gains and stuff going on. The next question comes in from Streaky, who asks, or who says, currently on 39 transfers and 12k. I have Maddison, but I don't have Son. Should I look to move Maddison onto Rodri and Diaz onto Son, or save the transfers as I have captaincy covered for a while? Also, is cash a hold? I think for the Maddison onto Rodri transfer, you are kind of in the same boat as I am with it looking like a good move on paper with all Spurs' single game days out the road, but again, you will see on tomorrow's video about the Spurs captaincies kind of needing to be there. So in terms of, I do actually like these two moves going forward, because Son is probably on paper the better captaincy than Maddison is, but I don't think Maddison to Son is a worthy transfer. It feels like it's just a bit of a waste, but the fact that you're doing Maddison onto Rodri works, and you still have Diaz in your team, who I do think you kind of have to get out with Man City's fixtures. Diaz to Son works as well, so that seems like a good move to me. I think it's one that I'm stuck with, because I'm kind of gutted that I didn't go for Son and went for Maddison instead, because Son has just been a lot better. I went for Son in the second team, Maddison in the first team, but my first team is the one that's kind of doing a bit better, and that doesn't have Son in it. So I do want to get Son in, but at the same time, I don't think doing Maddison straight to Son is worth it. So in your situation, I do think that's good. Having Diaz there that does need to come out is the same price as Son as well. I think that makes sense for a lot of people to do. And Maddison onto Rodri as well is just on paper a very good transfer to make in game week 14. In terms of cash, the fixtures are going to start getting a bit difficult for Aston Villa. I think they've got Spurs, City and Arsenal in a couple of weeks. They've got those 3 games within 4 games, I think, with Bournemouth in between that. So it is going to get a bit difficult, but I would personally hold them. I think up to the Overhaul, they don't have a really bad fixture run apart from those fixtures in there, and it kind of depends what other defenders you want to go for in your team. I think if you can get Romero, Saliba and Dunk, they're probably the 3 best you can get. And then obviously Tsimikas is kind of there in the background as well. But in terms of having a strong 3 defenders where you can not have to worry about taking any of them out, they're the 3 I would have. So I think if you can get cash out in a couple of weeks to someone a bit more solid, because he hasn't really been getting the same attacking returns as he did a couple of weeks ago, I would probably do that, but I think you don't really have to do that this week. I think you've got a couple more weeks before you'd have to do that. I'd probably hold against Spurs, and I would probably hold against Bournemouth, and then you could maybe look at getting him out before they play City and Arsenal. But after that, again, it's still a good run for Villa, so if you wanted to hold, I wouldn't be totally against that. The next question comes from Halliday, who says, best time to move on Onana? Is there potential for Onana to Leno or Sa after United play Everton in time for the single game day with Fulham versus Wolves in game week 16? I think I said this maybe last week. I think it was, I can't remember which video it was or if it was just over on Twitter. I really don't think getting rid of Onana is needed. There obviously is potential because there is that single game day and you're getting a captaincy out of that, but Wolves are scoring goals right now, and that's like because they've just come off the back of 2 goals against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago, beat Man City, scoring 2 goals against them as well. So realistically, you wouldn't want to be going with Leno as a captaincy because you're relying on saves. So you'd be looking at Sa, but if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, Onana still has more points than Sa does this season. Onana's maybe only like 8 to 10 points off being one of the top goalkeepers, and I think over like we've got 13-14 games played now, that's really not that much, and I think making that that's not even worth a transfer realistically. If you're talking 8 points, a transfer is maybe worth between 10 and 12. There's really no difference in There's not much of a difference in having the different goalkeepers, whether it's the number 1 goalkeeper or the number 12th. So I would personally just keep Onana. The saves are coming in. No team in the Premier League's really keeping clean sheets consistently right now. So you are just relying on the goalkeepers that are getting the saves, and Onana is getting that. So I would probably just keep. Yeah, he's a bit more expensive, but again, like the Leno and Sa and stuff, it's only like 0.6, I think, maybe less than what Onana is. And if you're talking just making one transfer just to do that, I probably wouldn't do that. And like I said, Fulham Wolves seems like it's got like a 1 each written all over it. So for me, I do think it's probably just a skip. If you do want a captaincy, I would go to maybe like Polina. But in terms of the goalkeepers, I would probably just ignore it. I do absolutely see nothing wrong with having Onana. And again, I would probably just look at keeping him to the overhaul. Again, it's never good making goalkeeper transfers, and like I was saying, I really don't think Onana is playing poorly enough to the point where you would have to go for someone or make a transfer to go for someone different. And again, even Sa is scoring less points than Onana right now, so I wouldn't go to him just because of a captaincy. The next question comes in from Aaron, who asks what to do with James Ward-Prowse and Namba with 39 transfers left. I think if you've got money in the bank, I would prioritise getting in Rodri. But if you're trying to get rid of those, you're probably going to need a midfielder in there. Rodri is easily like one of the most top priority transfers you can go for right now. If you're struggling with budget, I think I would try and move Namba to Tsimikas. That's going to cost you 0.6, and Ward-Prowse I would move to Polina, and that would gain you 0.5. So you really only need 0.1 million in the bank to make those two moves. That way you have Tsimikas up until the overhaul, while Robertson's out anyway, and you've got Polina covering for that single game day against Wolves. I think for me, they're the two transfers I would make if I had no money in the bank. But again, if you had money to spare, I would look at the likes of Rodri, Son if you need another Spurs player. And that's probably it, to be honest. I think if you're talking like the template players, you know, your Watkins, Sakas, if you don't have any of them and you have money to spare, I would try go for one of them. But if you are struggling for cash, I think it would be Tsimikas and Polina would be my two picks there. Next up is MacPMC, who says, how many transfers remaining would you say is a minimum for the overhaul? Again, basing it off my own plans, I would like to have 30 by the overhaul. That's purely because I think it's better to attack fixtures towards the second half of the season than it is the first. So I like to have a bit more over halfway. But I think if you've got 25 or more by the overhaul, you're probably doing fine. You know, it is the halfway point of the season, so to have the halfway point in transfers makes sense. I think if you've got any less than maybe like 20 by the overhaul, you really need to start cutting it back, because that is quite a lot used. But I do think if you've used less than half, then you're in an absolutely fine position. But realistically, I think anything more than 30, you're doing absolutely perfect. And yeah, I think my minimum threshold would be 25 for the overhaul, or maybe like we'll go 23, because using an extra 1 or 2 is fine. So I'm going to go 23, just a tiny bit over halfway, I think should be the minimum. Next up, GG Magpie asks, who would you rather take out for Simicast on Sunday, either Walker or Nakamba? For me, I don't really like Nakamba as much as anymore, but I would probably rather have him as an enabler to save some budget than I would Walker. I think Walker does look like a great option, and once the fixtures clear up for City, probably will be in most teams, especially like overhaul teams and stuff. He's probably going to be very popular. But for now, I think they've got fixtures against Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, Villa in the next 5. Those are teams that do kind of keep possession a bit more than the lower level teams, and Walker does often just scrape passing bonus compared to the other City defenders. So I think even like playing against Liverpool and stuff, a team that keeps possession, Walker's definitely not going to be getting passing there. And looking at those fixtures as well, it's very unlikely they'll be keeping a lot of clean sheets. So you're probably going to have a lot of 2-pointers from Walker over the next couple of weeks. And again, you can compare that to Nakamba and say it's probably going to be the same, but you are paying 2 million more for Walker. So I would just do Walker to Simicast right now, keep Nakamba. If you've got, again, you are saving 2 million, or what, like 1.4 million from that transfer, you can always upgrade Nakamba to someone else who's roughly 8 million. But for me, I definitely would be getting rid of Walker, because I do think there's going to be a lot of blanks coming from him in the coming weeks. And the final question comes in from the Scottish Guardiola, who says, having a good start, currently inside the top 1,000. I've used 15 transfers so far and was looking at getting Rodri in for Son. Is that worth it, or should I stick with Son? Again, we've kind of went over this already. I would personally do the Maddison to Rodri transfer, but I think if you've got Son, with the amount of captaincies that you can, or with the amount of game days that are coming up, that Son is the best captain. Mainly through December. I don't know if I think there's maybe 1 or 2 in November, but most of them come in December. I would probably just try hold on to Son. I would try and get Rodri in another way though, if you can possibly find the budget to do so. But I think you can have a look at yourself. We will go over it again in tomorrow's video, but you can have a look yourself at Spurs' upcoming game days and decide if you can captain Son. Like there's one, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, a Sunday where Spurs play against Villa and Man United play against Everton. Son probably would be your captain on that day, but you could possibly captain Watkins. There is a few of those, so make sure you look into that before you confirm that transfer in. Just make sure there's no days that you would want to be captaining Son. If there's maybe like one day, then sure, you can make that transfer, but I would personally try to look elsewhere if possible. I think Son is someone that you are going to be wanting to keep up until the overhaul. And that wraps up this week's Q&A. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and make sure to subscribe as well. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. We're only, I think, 63 off of it, which is absolutely fantastic. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Again, you can always get involved in these videos if you go over to my Twitter page on a Wednesday night, and there'll be a tweet there. Just leave a comment and you can be in next week's video. But again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.